from a steady decline in the ratings to a Hall of Famer calling out the lack of strategy in the game. This is why the NBA is relying on drama to stay relevant. It's no secret that the NBA's ratings have dropped over the past few years. To be honest, they've been on the decline for some years now, but it turned drastically worse in 2020. The NBA Finals received an average of 7.5 million views per game, which was a 48% decrease from the 2019 Finals. This is due to multiple factors including players bouncing around franchises, the unimaginable amounts of guaranteed money, and the lack of importance of regular season games. But the biggest issue that the NBA faces is the limited number of teams that are actually competitive. Just look back to the years when the league was extremely successful. Michael Jordan's era was what brought the NBA to the world, but it wasn't because of how great it was. It was because he was pushed to his limits by the bad boy Detroit Pistons and the New York Knicks. The Last Dance documentary that aired during COVID showed exactly this, and it reminded the NBA fans what they've been missing since his airness ruled the courts. After that, the duo of Shaquille O'Neal and Kobe Bryant stole the show and made the league must-watch TV. Then LeBron James broke into the scene and teamed up with Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh to win a couple of championships in Miami. But he too was pushed by Dirk Nowitzki and the Dallas Mavericks to the 2011 NBA championship. A lot of the credit for this goes to David Stern, who did everything in his power to keep the league as competitive as possible. He wasn't afraid to step into the transactions between the teams either. The commissioner blocked deals between the Lakers, Houston Rockets, and the Hornets, even though it was deemed controversial at the time. Stern's idea was to strike a balance between the teams, which ultimately resulted in a competitive balance in the league overall. Under the next commissioner, Adam Silver, the era of the super team started. All big names could be found in a handful of teams, and they were the favorites to win the league every year. Everyone agrees that this is a problem that needs to be addressed. Another problem that contributes to the lower level of play overall is a lack of motivation. And this stems from the guaranteed money that the players are promised. The NBA's gotten to a point where absurd sums of cash are being splashed around players who aren't even top tier, and it's negatively impacted the players, teams, and the league as a whole. Far too many players are getting max deals, which should have been limited to the most deserving players. I mean, sure, the teams want to pay a lot for the best players, but some of these supposed best players haven't even proven themselves. This is an issue on which MJ has spoken up as well. Fully guaranteed money given out prematurely usually results in a lack of drive and effort on the player's end. Maybe the NBA can learn a thing or two from the NFL on the contract structure and limit the guarantees it provides to its players. It'll also limit the power players have over the league, and the movement there has been in the last decade or so. Because right now, the players are becoming bigger than the league. I mean, when Jordan and Kobe were running rampant, the league absolutely loved them. They built huge careers on historic franchises, and the NBA was able to market and monetize their careers. When all-stars are on the move constantly, it's hard for the NBA to do much in that regard. It may be great for the player, but it's not so good for the league. When guys like LeBron and Kevin Durant are constantly on the move, then the NBA has next to no control over them. Fans are now essentially supporting the individual players rather than their teams, and that's all because the teams can't do much in the face of the superstars. The players have the option to walk or renegotiate after the first couple of seasons. This also means that the small market teams will never win because they simply don't have the ability to sign the biggest names in the league. What's more is that with the 82-game season, not even the most diehard of fans watch the whole thing. People turn to YouTube for the highlights of the games, and even players try to save themselves for the playoffs. That doesn't mean that the NBA is irrelevant right now. In fact, it has managed to stay in the news. But for all the wrong reasons. It feels as if the league isn't about basketball anymore. There are tons of issues with the NBA which include racism, anti-Semitism, misogyny, abuse, and sexual misconduct, and they've become much bigger than basketball. The saddest part about it all is that the league hasn't really been talking about it either. The NBA marketed itself as a progressive league that cared about everyday people and allowed its players to use their voices to bring about change for their fans. But with all the scandals revolving around it, the league has been mostly silent. Maybe they're just trying to avoid any further controversies, but it feels wrong. There have been an increased number of brawls and fights within the game as well. Now, obviously, tempers tend to run high during games, but it's been happening a lot more frequently these days. All the drama seems to have done the trick, because the TV ratings for the finals have improved slightly as compared to 2020. But they still have a long way to go before they can get anywhere near what they used to be. The teams don't really care about winning. They're more focused on generating headlines. In the last few seasons, the Lakers, Nets, and Warriors have been dominating the headlines. Even though the Milwaukee Bucks, Utah Jazz, and the Cleveland Cavaliers did really well, you probably didn't hear a beep about them in the media. That's why no one cared about the Nuggets winning the NBA, but the Lakers who got swept were still relevant. Only because of spicy storylines, petty feuds, and big names dominating the rosters. Lately, that seems to be the way of the NBA. Certain teams and certain players hog all the attention, and it doesn't even matter if they're doing well on the court. The Golden State Warriors used to be better until recently. They had big stars but were also pretty stable. But since Draymond Green's punch of Jordan Poole and the resulting suspension, the team didn't look as if they could put on a good title defense. These franchises are becoming more soap operas than teams. Take Kyrie Irving, for example, who first supported an anti-Semitic post, then refused to properly apologize for it. Then we found out that he'd repeatedly ignored the play calls of the former head coach, Steve Nash. It feels as if there are two separate NBA competitions going on, the race for all the clocks, retweets, and curious eyeballs, and the less important one, to lift the trophy. It wasn't like this before. Instead, teams garnered attention based on their gameplay. The drama and the drop in performance obviously go hand in hand. The more conflicts there are within a team, the more likely things are to not go so well on the court. This affects the strategies as well, because now teams are focused more on scoring more points rather than working on their fundamentals to improve their game overall. That's why you see more players overloaded on the offensive side, while disregarding the defensive gameplay completely at times. That's why Charles Barkley thinks that the NBA is awful to watch today, because the players just want to improve their stats more than anything else. This has resulted in a much worse basketball product than it ever was in the past, because the game has become like a three-point shootout with next to no fundamentals at all. While talking on the All the Smoke podcast, Barkley also added that the players just go to the gym and jack up threes all night, and if they succeed in doing that, they win. The former player doesn't really mind shooting threes, but if you're doing that, then just call it a three-point shooting contest instead of basketball. Barkley also feels that this has made the game very one-dimensional, because the three-point line decides the game today, and the defense and other aspects of basketball rarely come into play. Charles wishes that the big men in the game would utilize the post more, like how it used to be for centers and forwards back when he was playing. While Barkley may not enjoy the basketball itself, he said that the competition is tougher now than it used to be in the past. So, from a Hall of Famer calling out the lack of strategy in the game, to a decline in the ratings. This was why the NBA is relying on drama to stay relevant.